Ever feel that squeeze, where your home, your biggest asset is just sitting there gaining value, but you can't really tap into that wealth easily? Maybe for, I don't know, unexpected bills or helping with college tuition.
Or just breathing room.
Exactly. Just
Yeah.
freeing up some room in the monthly budget. Well, today we're doing a deep dive into something called home equity agreements, or HEAs.
Right.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission here is to really pull out the key stuff from the sources, what these HEAs actually are, how they function, the surprising upsides, but also the potential downsides.
Yeah, the pitfalls.
And it's all geared towards helping you figure out if this could maybe work for a specific goal, like, say, seriously cutting down your monthly mortgage payments.
And, understanding these kinds of innovative, maybe less common financial tools like HEAs is particularly relevant right now, given the economy and everything.
Yeah, that's a good point.
There's just a lot of complexity out there, isn't there? And our goal really is to slice through that complexity, find what actually matters for your financial decisions.
Absolutely. So let's start there. What exactly is a home equity agreement?
Okay.
Because I think for many it's a new concept. Here's where it gets really interesting. At its core, it's basically a deal, right?
A financial arrangement.
You, the homeowner, get a lump sum of cash from an investor.
Correct.
And in exchange, that investor gets a piece of your home's future value, like a share of the equity and any appreciation.
That's the essence of it.
Now, here's the kicker, the thing that really stands out compared to, well, almost anything else. HEAs usually don't involve monthly payments.
0 monthly payments. That's the big headline.
Right. Repayment only happens way down the line, usually when you sell the house or maybe refinance or just when the agreement term ends, which could be, 10, 20, even 30 years later?
Typically 10 to 30 years, that's the common range, yeah.
That no monthly payments thing sounds almost too good. What's the catch people might miss there? Is it really that simple on the surface?
Well, you're right to flag that. What's fascinating here is it fundamentally differs from debt, as we usually think about it.
Okay.
You're not taking on a new loan. There's no recurring monthly bill hitting your account for the HEA itself.
Right.
Instead, you're essentially trading. You're giving up a slice of your potential future gains.
For cash today.
Exactly.
Right.
For immediate cash.
Yes.
It sounds simple in terms of cash flow because, well, for your monthly budget, it kind of is.
Okay.
Now, the process itself, it's pretty structured. First step, the investor needs to know what the house is worth now. So an appraisal happens.
Makes sense.
Then, based on that value, you get a cash offer, usually up to, say, 25% of the home's current value. It varies, but that's a common ceiling.
Up to 25%. Okay.
Then the key part, in return for that cash, the investor lays claim to a pre-agreed percentage, not just of the current equity, but of the future value, including appreciation.
Okay. So they share in the growth.
Precisely. And then the agreement wraps up, like you said, when you sell or refinance or hit the end date of the term. But, and this is crucial, during that whole time, you are still the homeowner. You're paying property taxes, insurance, handling maintenance, all the usual homeowner responsibilities.
Right. The HEA company isn't suddenly mowing your lawn.
Exactly. You retain ownership and responsibility.
Okay. So we know what they are and how they work, roughly. The next big question is obviously pros and cons, right?
Always.
So what does this all mean? Let's look at both sides of the coin. The pros seem pretty clear up front. Top of the list, no monthly payments. That's a huge deal for cash flow, as we said.
Massive.
Then there's the access. Apparently, the credit and income requirements can be lower than for, say, a HELOC or a cash-out refi.
That's often true, yes. They might work with scores down, sometimes even as low as 500, which opens doors for some folks.
Wow. Okay. And upfront costs.
Generally, no direct out-of-pocket costs. Fees, like for the appraisal or origination, are usually just taken out of the lump sum you receive.
So netted out. And one more big one. It's not technically debt, right? So it doesn't usually hit your debt-to-income ratio, your DTI.
That's a key structural difference. It's an equity investment, not a loan. So yeah, it typically doesn't increase your DTI, which could be helpful if you need to borrow for other things later.
Okay, those are some pretty compelling advantages. Flexibility, access.
They really are. But, and it's a significant but, this raises an important question. What are you giving up for that flexibility? What's the trade-off?
Right. The cons, let's hear them.
Okay, first, the potential cost over time. This is maybe the biggest one to wrap your head around.
Oh, so?
Because you're trading that fixed interest rate of a loan for a percentage of all the future growth. If your home appreciates a lot, that investor's share could end up being significantly more money than the total interest you might have paid on a traditional home equity loan or HEO over the same period.
I see. So potentially much more expensive in the long run if things go well with the property value?
Potentially, yes, which leads straight to the second con. You're giving up future equity. It's a direct reduction in your long-term wealth building from that specific asset, your home.
You own less of the future pie.
You own less of the future pie, exactly. Then there's complexity. HEAs aren't super standardized yet, meaning the terms, the calculations, the fees, they can vary quite a bit between different HEA providers. It makes comparison shopping a bit trickier than with, say, mortgages.
Right, not quite apples to apples sometimes.
It can be harder, yeah. And finally, there's always the potential for disputes down the road, especially around that final home value assessment when it's time to settle up. What's the actual market value when you sell or the term ends? There could be disagreements there.
Okay, appraisal disagreements. Got it. This is all a bit abstract, though. Let's try to make it really concrete.
Good idea.
Okay, let's unpack this specific situation. Imagine a listener, maybe it's you, bought a house for $1 million. You've got $300,000 in equity already built up.
Okay, $1 house value, $300K equity.
And your number one goal right now, get those monthly mortgage payments down. Big time. How could an HEA possibly help here?
All right, so with a $1 million home, we mentioned that HEAs often go up to maybe 25% of the value.
So $250,000?
Potentially, yes. And since you have $300,000 in equity in this scenario, you'd likely be eligible for that full $250,000 lump sum from an HEA provider.
Okay, so you get $250K cash. How does that cut the mortgage payment?
Well, let's run some rough numbers. Your initial mortgage would be $700,000, right? One or other price, $300K equity.
Right.
You take that $250,000 cash from the HEA and you apply it directly to your mortgage principal.
Okay, paying down the loan balance.
Exactly. So your $700,000 mortgage balance suddenly drops to $450,000.
Wow, okay, that's a big drop.
It is. Now think about the payment impact. Let's say it was a 30-year loan at 7% interest, just for example's sake.
Okay.
That original $700K loan, your payment might be around $4,660 a month, principal and interest.
Yeah, hefty.
But after paying it down to $450K with the HEA money, that same loan, same rate, same term, the payment could drop to roughly $2,995.
Whoa. From $4,660 to under $3,000.
Yeah, it's a reduction of about $1,665 a month. That's like a 35% cut in your mortgage payment.
That is dramatic. My immediate thought, though, is, okay, what's the giant but? Because, you know, a 35% payment cut sounds amazing, but it feels like there must be a pretty significant downside somewhere.
Absolutely. And, you know, if we connect this to the bigger picture, this really highlights that classic short-term gain versus long-term cost dynamic.
Okay.
Short-term, the benefit is crystal clear. You've just slashed a huge chunk off your biggest monthly expense.
Massive relief.
Massive relief. Frees up cash flow immediately. For someone maybe struggling with payments or facing income uncertainty, that is, well, like you said, potentially life-changing.
Right.
But the long-term trade-off is giving the investor their share. In this case, let's say they took a 25% share of the future value for that $250K. Now, fast forward. Let's imagine your $1 million home appreciates nicely over the next 10 or 15 years. Maybe it's worth $1.5 million when you sell or the term ends.
Plausible in some markets?
Definitely. So the investor's 25% share isn't of the original million, it's of the future $1.5 million.
Ah, so they get 25% of $1.5 million, which is
$375,000.
Right. So you got $250,000 up front. But you end up paying back $375,000 when you sell. That's $125,000 more than you received.
Exactly. That $125,000 difference. That's essentially the cost of accessing that initial $250K and getting that immediate payment relief instead of paying interest on a traditional loan.
That really clarifies the trade-off. Okay, so pulling this all together for the listener trying to decide. So what does this all mean for you? When is an HEA maybe the right call specifically for cutting housing debt?
Yeah, when does it make sense?
Well, it seems like it is beneficial if that immediate cash flow, that monthly payment reduction, is absolutely paramount, like the number one critical need.
If that's the driving force, yes.
The fact there are no HEA payments each month, plus you've lowered your mortgage payment, that provides serious breathing room, especially if income is tight or other debts are high. It's like finding a hidden lever to ease the pressure right now.
A pressure release valve.
Yeah. But it's clearly not the tool for someone focused purely on maximizing long-term wealth from their home, is it?
Generally, no.
Especially if you live in an area where you expect strong appreciation, you really have to, look closely at that future cost. Because, as we saw, the investor's share of that growth could easily cost you more than loan interest would have over time.
That's the crux of it, which, this raises an important question. What are the specific conditions where you'd seriously consider it?
Yeah, the checklist almost.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Our take, based on this, is you'd really only lean towards an HEA for debt reduction if, 1, your absolute priority is cutting payments now, more so than maximizing equity later.
Okay, priority 1,
Yeah.
immediate relief.
And 2, crucially, if other options aren't really on the table for you, like maybe your credit score or income doesn't qualify you for a good HELOC or a cash-out refi.
So if traditional routes are blocked.
Exactly. It's not a first resort for most, perhaps.
Yeah.
It's a specific tool for specific situations. It's like choosing, between a safe bond and a speculative stock depends entirely on your goals and risk tolerance.
Right.
And just to hammer home that long-term cost again, think about that $1 million home example. Let's say it grows at just a modest 4% per year. Pretty average long-term rate.
Okay.
In 10 years, that $1 home is worth roughly $1.48 million.
Right.
If the investor has a 25% stake in the future value, you're paying them back about $370,000 on that initial $250,000 they gave.
$120,000 cost over 10 years in that scenario.
Roughly, yes. That's the price of admission for the upfront cash and no monthly HEA payments.
So it really boils down to this core tension, doesn't it? With home equity agreements, you've got this immediate financial relief, this flexibility.
Cash now.
Versus the very real long-term cost of sharing your home's future growth.
That's the fundamental trade-off.
So as you, the listener, think about this, the question to really ponder is, what is your main financial goal right now? Is it that immediate cash flow boost, that payment reduction? Or is it about maximizing every dollar of long-term wealth from your home? And how does that priority square with the way these HEAs actually work?
Yeah, it's about alignment. Ultimately, the power comes from, being informed, right? Understanding all sides of a financial tool like this.
Definitely.
And making sure whatever you choose truly fits your personal situation, your finances, and where you want to end up.